Hello and welcome to my diffusal video for Color Square Madness and Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. Even if you don't understand a word I just said, don't worry. My commentary should hopefully explain what I've done here, assuming you're already familiar with vanilla Keep Talking. First things first, this is all modded, so if you're wondering why these modules aren't familiar, that's why. Fortunately, I do have the time to explain how all the modules on this bomb work. But before I get to that, I'll describe what makes this diffusal in particular interesting. And no, it's not that I'm playing both rules. That's so common we have an abbreviation for it, EFM, which stands for Experting for Myself. That should be self-explanatory. The actual reason this solve is interesting is that I created my own software to find Ruleseed that makes the modules as easy as possible. But for that to mean anything, I'll first have to explain what Ruleseed is. In short, using the Ruleseed modifier mod, a seed value can be used to randomize the manuals and their corresponding modules a bit. The mechanics of the modules aren't changed, it's just the minor stuff that gets randomized, and of course what that entails differs from module to module. About 2 months ago, I wondered to myself, what would be the optimal Ruleseed for Color Square Madness? To find an answer to this question, I decided to write my own code to try and find that seed. There might be a better seed out there, but the one I found, 130-625-7861, was the best that I could find that fit a few criteria. I won't go into exactly how I did all this, it was mostly brute forcing and a bit of manual checking. Rather, I will discuss what makes this seed so good, once I get to explaining how these modules work. But I'll briefly talk about the bomb itself. You've probably noticed that all these modules look very similar to each other. This is not just the same module repeated 47 times, that wouldn't be interesting anyway. Rather, there's actually 7 different modules on this bomb, each one varying in how many times they appear on the bomb, and, more importantly, mechanically. 6 of those 7 come from the Colored Squares Brethren series of modules, hence why the bomb is called Color Square Madness. To figure out which module is which, you have to look at the number of times each color appears. That's all you need to figure out which one you have. The only module that isn't part of the Brethren is Divided Squares, which I'll talk about later on. Some final notes before I explain how the modules work. For those who are colorblind, letters are provided in almost all of the squares so you can follow along. You can thank the Colorblind Helper mod for that. Speaking of following along, I provided links to the manuals in the description below. Both the manuals and any relevant rule seeds are available there. Without further ado, time to go over the modules. The first thing I looked for in these seeds was a good varicolored squares. Varicolored squares have 4 colors that occur exactly 3 times each, with another color occurring exactly 4 times each. In varicolored squares, you use 5 pentagonal diagrams to determine which color needs to be pressed next. At each step, you need the colors of the flashing square and the 4 squares adjacent to it. You use the number of distinct colors and their arrangement within the relevant pentagon to work out which color you need to press. With the seed I found, all 5 pentagons ignoring rotation are exactly the same. This saves a bit of time, since you don't need to switch which pentagon is relevant. This only happens roughly 6,500 times out of the total roughly 2 billion seeds I needed to check. I should also note that the manual I used for varicolored is not in fact the same seed value as the others. The reason for this change isn't entirely obvious, so bear with me. If you look at the table in the regular varicolored manual, the single color rule uses the word clockwise, and the catch-all rule at the bottom uses the word counterclockwise. However, Ruleseed can change each of those to be either clockwise or counterclockwise at random. In the seed I found, both of these are different from the regular manual, which for me personally made the module more error-prone. To fix this, I found a seed where the sequence of colors go in the opposite direction. In my case, I used seed 12105-963. This way, those 2 rules are the same as I'm used to, so I don't make those mistakes. Now, out of those 6,500 seeds, which one of those is best? The next thing I tried to find was how many among those had the best decolored squares. Decolored squares have 5 colors that occur exactly twice each, and 2 colors that occur exactly 5 times each. In decolored squares, there's a grid of cells which work like a flowchart. At each step, if the cell you are currently in contains the color of the square you're currently at, then you press the square and follow the P arrow, otherwise follow the N arrow. Notice that there's one flowchart cell containing all 5 colors and another that contains no colors. If these 2 cells are pointed at each other, and you end up in either of these 2 cells, all you need to do is press every other square to solve the module, which saves even more time than varicolored's optimization. Out of the 6,500 seeds previously described, there's only 54 seeds where those two cells point to each other. However, I actually did something even better. I checked which of those seeds had the most entry colors into those two cells. The seed I found has a total of 14 of them, which is the most I was able to find. And those were the two optimizations I found. The rest of the modules aren't that much different from Ruleseed, and I don't have much else to discuss about regarding that, so I won't. Colored squares have a single color which occurs fewer times than all the others. At each step, you take the number of white squares and the group of colors you last pressed, and use the table to find which group of squares to press next. Yes, it really is that simple. This module is actually the most frequent on the BOM. Because of its frequency, this is actually the one I attempted to optimize first. However, the results were disappointing, to say the least. Uncolored squares have two colors which occur fewer times than the others. In other words, a two-way tie for fewest. At each step, you take those two colors and their order to find which shapes you need to press. Also fairly simple, but there's a bit of optimization you can do by making sure regions of unpressed squares are small. Discolored squares have four colors which occur exactly once each. You note the position, color, and order you press those four squares. At each stage, you find the correct color you need to pay attention to, apply a transformation at those squares' positions, and press those transformed positions in a certain order. I hope you were able to follow along with that. Juxtacolored squares have 16 different colors. If you are familiar with adjacent letters, it's the exact same idea as that. Use the colors adjacent to each square to determine whether or not to press it. And finally, divided squares, the single square has two colors. One that's shown by default, and another that's shown when the square is tapped. Using these two colors, you get a number of solves which you must wait for before you can hold the square as the timer changes. If you miss this solve count, these squares will divide, hence the name, and a more complicated process is used. This is the only module that does not have Ruleseed support. And with that, I believe that's all I need to say regarding the solve. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, suggestions, leave them in the comments below. Special thanks goes to all these people scrolling up the screen right now, especially Quinn West for editing this video. I was in a Discord call when this was happening and forgot to tell folks I was recorded, so I figured I'd kill two birds with one stone and provide commentary to clarify what's going on here. And with all that said, enjoy the music without my commentary in the way. Thank you very much for watching, and take care. red. Red, blue.
Neat.
Is green.
Okay,
Counter is
so now I
blue,
have
and
that.
we're done.
What's...
Yay, I did it.
What
I
did
should
you
not
do?
have had a minute left with the advantage
Lan.
that I had.
We did it.
He did easy challenge.
No, I did color squared madness, but I rigged the seed so that it was as easy as possible.
You're one of the stupidest motherfuckers I've ever known. Have I told you that?
However, I actually did something even better. I checked each of those seeds. That's not a grammatically correct sentence.